Making a nest out of an old teapot is a great way to encourage wildlife to come to your garden. Using a teapot, you can either encourage robins, wrens or other such birds that like open nests. It's also a great way to recycle materials that you're not going to use anymore. So this is the teapot that I'm going to use. As you can see, I've repaired the lid several times. I've repaired the spout a few times. So this is the perfect teapot to use for the robin nest. So my teapot's got holes in it to stop the birds going down it, but also it gives drainage out of the spout. However, if your teapot doesn't have holes, then you can use a gauze or a mesh to stop any of the materials going down the spout. There's a few things you need to consider on where to put your robin nest box. The first one is the location. So as you can see here, we've got lots of greenery, so this is a perfect place for it. Also, this wall here is facing northeast, and you need to put your nest box anywhere between north to southeast. The direction of where it's facing is important because of the sun. So this is perfect. The other thing you need to consider is the distance above the ground level. So it needs to really be between 1.5 meters to 2 meters, and if we put it up here, we've got about 1.6. So that's perfect. Also, what's great about here is there is also a little bit of covering for them, which they like as well. So I'm going to put my teapot here. So when fixing your teapot, you've got two options. You can either try and drill a hole through the bottom so that you can screw a screw into some wood or a wall or something like that. Or like what I'm going to do here, because I've got a mesh here, I'm going to put a fixing round the handle and around the spout, and that will give it enough stability and hold it in place. As you can see, I've used cable ties. You can use metal, wire or anything that you got to hand. But really that's it, finished. I'm just tidying this up. That's solid, it's not going anywhere, it's attached well. And now let's hope that robins come and nest there. All I've done really here is just printed out some pictures of the wildlife that we've taken around the area, laminated them. We've got some old pallet pieces, and literally I'm gonna sort of put a frame together with the photos like that and screw this in, which will hold the 5 pieces together. I'm going to cut along here, and then we're going to move them so they're not equal, to make it a bit more quirky, but we'll come back to that and you'll see what I mean. I mark along here, which I've done there, and then cut these so that I can start building the frame. Just going to use a circular saw to cut through on the marks that I've done. So I've just stapled this in place, and then what I'm going to do next is I've got 2 batons here that I'm just going to line up like that, and then just screw through, and that will hold the 5 planks behind and just make a nice rustic frame. So there we are, I've got my pallet frame, screwed in the bars. I mean, if you wanted to make it a bit more professional, you could turn it over and screw in this way, and then obviously when you come back to this way you wouldn't have seen the screws. It's supposed to be rustic. The idea is you're supposed to be looking at the photos of the wildlife. I've got my frame, and what I want to do is just screw some of these sort of 2-hole things for wire. So I'm going to screw them in and put wire across so that I can hang them up outside. These are quite annoying to kind of get started, so sometimes I find it easier just to get a little drill, start a little hole like that, and then that gives me the hole to get going. I've put the wire on so you can see that I can hang it up, and if I turn it around you can see the finished photo frame. Adding an old mirror to your garden is a great way of creating an illusion of space and adding a bit of interest into a corner which might not be very interesting. So I've taken this old mirror that I don't use anymore, and I've painted the back with outdoor wood paint. So we've got an old area here that isn't really used and doesn't look very good, and our sort of seating area is just there. So I've put a stone, and I'm going to just place the mirror there, and the idea is I'm also going to put a pot of flowers or geraniums that will flower later on in front of it, and that looks great. I'm happy with that. Making a small little garden in an old book is a great way of bringing the outdoors inside. I've got an old book which I don't want to use anymore. The hard back ones are slightly better because they hold their rigidity. The thicker is also the better, but for this one I've got a relatively thin one, which is fine. What you want to do is mark a frame inside, which is where you're going to cut away. Normally you can do about 2 centimeters from the edge, but as you can see here, it doesn't include the letters on this book, and I quite like to see some of the old words. So I'm going to actually make it about 2.5 in. So I'm just going to put a little mark here. It's best to use a pencil because if you use a pen, it can bleed into the paper. So 2.5, 2.5. I'm going to go 2.5 on the bottom as well. Actually, I'm going to do 3 just to allow to get some wording. And then on this side, I'm going to just do 1.5 because that includes the writing again. So there we are. We've got a square which we're now going to cut out. So get yourself a sharp knife and just start cutting where you've drawn the lines. And this will take a bit of time because you can only do so many pages at once. But it's worth it in the end. Is to get yourself a plastic food bag. There's several ways you can do it. You can either sort of go like that with the seams. My bag's slightly bigger than needed, so I'm actually just going to cut one of the back off it. This is an old bag that we've previously used, washed out. In fact, we've used it several times, and I think it's actually got a hole in the top, or the seal doesn't seal very well, which is why we're using this. So I'm going to just cut out a plastic square, which will then fit in nicely to the book and have some overlap as well. So the next stage is to peel some of the papers that you've got back. You're going to, it's a bit tricky this because it's quite a tight book, and that's where you will put the paper in there, and we're going to cut it at a later date. But if we just rest it there for the moment. Yeah. Now we want to get some gravel to put underneath and some soil. So once you've got your plastic in, I've got a selection of smaller gravel, larger gravel, soil. I've got some stones to decorate at the end and some hens and chicks. The reason why we use hens and chicks, or otherwise known as house leeks or other succulents, is because they don't need much soil and they don't need much water either, so they're perfect for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bit of gravel in first, and this one holds the plastic in, but 2, it will produce a bit of layer for the water to sit, so nothing's sitting kind of on the water. So we'll just sort of spread that out. Then I'm going to put some soil in. Then we're going to put our hens and chicks, so we just going to squeeze that down there and put them there, and put a bit of soil around it. I think I'm going to put a few more the little gravel in and around here. I mean, the beauty of this now is you can do what you want using whatever you've got to make your garden how you want to. And then I think I'm going to stick a stone here and a few of these other bigger stones in and around. I'm going to put some gravel here, but I'm going to leave enough space here because I'm going to put a little tea light candle. So the next stage is we want to stick this plastic down. You can either glue it down, but to be honest with you, I find sellotape's probably the easiest. I'm going to have to put something there to hold that back. So that's probably okay on this edge, but this edge is a bit too long, so I'm going to have to cut that off. That's probably okay. What you can do as well, if you want to, is just stick a little bit over a couple of other pages, so just so it keeps it held down. Next stage is to bring the paper bits that you left over, and this will just tidy up the look and hide the tape that you've put down. So just do it carefully, just so it fits in nicely. And then you might want to just brush off and clean off some of the leaves where you've got soil, and you can either do this with a hand and some kitchen paper. When you're watering them, just make sure you put the water in the middle so that it doesn't go onto the side of the book, and it goes into the middle, and you just have to do that maybe once every couple of weeks. So I've just added a candle, a tea light as well, just for a little bit more interest, and I'm really happy with that. So now we've brought our own little garden inside. This is a really simple but effective project. We're going to use some old jam jars, some gravel, some sand and some candles, and make some little tea lights to go around the house. Okay, the first one I'm going to do is the large one, and I'm going to put some large gravel in at the bottom. So just a small layer, I think, and then I'm going to pour some of the smaller gravel on top. There we are. And then I'm going to put my candle in and rest it there. I've gone for a large candle for the large jar, and that's candle number one done. So for the second one, I think we're going to put a bit of sand in the bottom. So these are things that I've just found in and around the garden. You can use whatever you want, gravel, you could use a bit of soil, anything that you can find. A little bit more in. There we are. I think with this one I'm going to do a few little bits of gravel as well. There we are, just add a little bit of texture, and I've got an old gold candle that I'm going to put in as well, and there we are, candle number two. For the last one, I'm going to keep it really, really simple. I'm just going to use my thin gravel, just about there, and I've got a tea light for this one, which again I'm just going to prop on the top. And there's candle number three. Thank you for joining me with this video. I hope you enjoyed it and look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers guys, bye.